Thank you for being with us today for this amazing presentation by Aurora Meyer. It's Vanity or Beyond Vanity Metrics. And as you can see, I'm not in my office or my studio today. We're doing this live on set because we're actually filming at another university as far as my company. So I'm gonna have to run, but I'm gonna turn it over to Aurora here in just a second. For those of you that know Aurora, she lives in mid-Missouri. Her background has been just really intrinsic in working with nonprofits, charities, and foundations, but she also, there it is, she's currently the communications manager of the Columbia Public Schools. She's had 8 years in journalism and 10 years in state and nonprofit marketing, and basically her last position was Director of Communications and Marketing for Mizzou Law School. So we're very happy. I know the St. Louis chapter of PRSA has had Aurora join us and give presentations in the past. So we really thank you for joining us today, Aurora, and giving your knowledge to everyone else. So Aurora, why don't you take it away? And thank you for being here today to give us some knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction, Chris. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. And I wanted to just let you know that I'm going to give you a whole slew of best practices. And I will be completely honest and forthright that in that 18-year career, there are things that I have done absolutely wrong. And that's okay. So doing things wrong is totally okay because you're going to learn from it. So as I talk about the agenda specifically, I want you to know that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I did something totally wrong, that's okay. Or if you're listening to this and you started a campaign in January and you're already 8 months in and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have known this before, that's okay too, because there's tons of opportunities to pivot, to change, and to do things better. So don't feel like that any of this is telling you you're doing things wrong. Think of it as telling you how to do things better. And we are going to cover a lot of ground. So I'm going to briefly go over some current trends, give you some suggestions for moving beyond the vanity metrics, discuss the platforms that might be the best place for you, cross-testing, some examples, as well as examples of testing and optimization, the importance of tracking and measurement, some takeaways, and we will have an opportunity for questions at the end. And I do want to let you know this will probably bump past an hour, and I'm planning to stay for at least half an hour afterwards. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, you have to get this in. I'll be around, totally okay. A couple of things that are important to note kind of off the bat are that according to a recent Cisco report, by 2023, there will be 49 billion devices connected to the internet. And all of those users and all of those consumers and all of the audience members that you're focusing on have kind of a zero tolerance policy for anything other than easy and fast and an exceptional digital experience that's authentic. And what I mean by authentic is it's your voice and you're not trying to copy somebody else. So it's you and what you're saying and what your organization is trying to bring to the table. Be authentic and be transparent. And that will help you with that quality over quantity. If you're providing really great what and when information to your audience that you've segmented, which is the who, you'll have a better chance of moving people down the funnel. Additionally, 80% of all internet traffic will be video by 2021. I read something interesting yesterday that said you should plan to have your audio off for any video that you're doing, which means you've got closed captioning, but that you can delight with the sound on. So plan for sound off, but delight with sound on. So the whole reason you guys are here is to talk about what's next. Likes, shares, views, impressions, comments, reach. That's all a great place to start. For some of us, that's really low-hanging fruit. For some of us, we've been doing that for a while and we're ready to move on to the next thing. And maybe some of us haven't even started. Likes, comments, and shares are a great way to get to know your audience and get to know what resonates really well with them. So social algorithms, behind Facebook, behind Twitter, behind Instagram, they're really prioritizing that community over one-way conversations. We all know Twitter is kind of like yelling into a void. You can yell into that void as much and as often as you want, but if you're engaging your audience and having conversations, the chances of your audience seeing the things you're trying to tell them more often is more likely to happen. Make sure your content has a purpose and meets your goals and objectives. Don't do the social equivalent of hopping into a party and just walking up to the first two people you see and jumping right into the conversation without knowing what they're talking about. If you establish your voice and your conversation tactics over time, you're going to have a lot more success in converting those people to your ultimate goals. So the part that you start with when you're getting to what's beyond vanity metrics is, what are the business goals that all of the things and all of the posts that you're making and all of the ads that you're running, what are the goals that your work will help you achieve? Maybe it's more customers, maybe it's an increased donation. Whatever it is, make sure that you are tying all of the things that you're producing with that big goal. This is a great time to introduce that 1 to 10 rule or 80-20 rule. And that's when for every 10 posts that you make, one of them should be explicitly, buy me, do this thing. I want this action, this behavior is what I'm looking for. The other 10 should be more subtle. It can be as simple as, hey, if you do this thing, this is the result, or this is the background. There's lots of opportunities to subtly do the same thing that buy me or do this action is asking. All right, so one of the ways that I keep track of what I'm working toward, and one of the ways that I keep track of the things that are important, is I have a whiteboard. And when I start to get drowning in the minutia or drowning in the asks of me, I can really easily look up at that whiteboard and say, is this thing moving me toward my goal? Is this thing something that is going to move that business goal forward? And so for me, and what you're looking at is February, because I haven't seen my whiteboard since then. And this is the whiteboard from the University of Missouri, and I'm now at Columbia Public Schools, but the goals are still applicable. Increasing audience, streamlining communications, increasing funding, but it's all actionable things that all of the content I'm creating should be moving towards. So when I start to get overwhelmed, I can take a deep breath, I can look up and I can say, is this thing I'm working on moving one of those goals forward? So now that we've established what the goals are, what are the key metrics that we should be focusing on that our social content should be working toward those goals for? Maybe it's leads, maybe it's conversions, maybe it's clicks or comments or non-org mentions. This is where you have an opportunity to go through and look for your key performance indicators. Whatever your KPIs are that are important to your organization, those are the action steps that are going to get you to your goals. So let's say your goal is more customers. Well, you have to have eyes on whatever it is that you're selling in order to get more customers. So you need to grow your audience. So my goal is more customers. The KPI that I'm looking for is audience growth. So I need to be making sure that the things that I'm posting and the things that I'm sharing are moving that growth forward. These are just some examples of KPIs that you might be interested in pursuing, but there's others. So work with your business goals, figure out what measurement will tell you if you've reached it. Ad recall is kind of a fun one that I like to work with. It involves different groups of people asking them if they remember seeing this thing. So you can do ad recall, not just for print things, but you can do an ad recall within a target audience on a social ad. So keep that one in mind as something that you might consider doing in the future. This is my favorite slide because it's really important for us as social marketers to be focused on a funnel. And if we go into every post we create, and if we go into every ad that we make as moving someone toward this funnel, from awareness to consideration to conversion to loyalty to advocacy, we're going to have significantly more success. I think about when I'm posting things, which one of these slices of the funnel does this post associate with? Which one of these slices of the funnel does this ad work best for? So remember your goals, remember your KPIs, and think about which one of these things applies to your funnel. Oops. Too fast. Okay, so you know what you're doing. Now we need to talk about where you're doing it. Before you start thinking about where your audience is, think about who your audience is, specific to your each individual KPIs and your individual goals. Using that information, consider testing 2 platforms, just 2. Don't do more than 2 to start, but test 2 platforms that you think are going to be the best performing, and get really, really good at those 2 and get a lot of actionable and detailed information back from your audience on what organic content they interact with the most, what moves them to click on the links that you're sharing. Get that information back and get really, really good at 1 or 2 platforms before adding on a third. And don't feel obligated to be on all platforms all the time, because your audience probably isn't on all platforms all the time. And you'll start to see that, yes, you might have some overlap between Facebook and, say, Instagram, but who's on when is going to differ. And the more organic content that you're putting out there, the more information you're going to get back that will help you move those KPIs forward. So this is a very brief overview of the different platforms that are available to you, and the different parts of the funnel that they connect with. If you are looking for more details than this overview, I really love the sidekicks.co blog post, and it's titled Social Media Ad Platform Comparison. I just think it's a really concise way to share it, and I'm happy to share that link with you, but this is just a brief overview, and it shows you how the different things that you're working through in that funnel really do coincide with the content that you can share on that particular platform. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to build brand awareness, talk about your company culture, share thought leadership, and ultimately move people into a LinkedIn group to be those advocates. Pinterest is another one. Pinterest is a lot of awareness for your brand and a lot of awareness for your organization, but you can very quickly move people through the funnel to be advocates. So you want them to know about the product that you are either providing as a service or selling, and then you move them into advocacy very quickly when they're sharing themselves using that or doing that or the results that they've gotten. It's a really, it's a very visual way to see someone move through that funnel concisely and pretty quickly. Snapchat. Everyone doesn't need to be on Snapchat. In fact, I have often said we don't need to be there. My favorite thing is when people come up to me and are like, we really need to be on Snapchat. Why do we need to be on Snapchat? Who are we going to reach there in a way that we're not going to reach in other avenues? For the organizations I've been a part of, it doesn't make sense for us to be there because we're wasting that social trust. So you can post the same content on every platform, but it has to be nuanced and it has to follow the social norms of that platform. And the things that we're sharing really aren't a limited time. It doesn't make sense for us to jump into that party conversation in an obtrusive way. And so for us, it hasn't made sense. Now, for other organizations, Snapchat is great. It's a way to get information to a really niche audience that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. You might notice that TikTok's not on here, but TikTok may be a great place and a great platform for your organization. And I would use the TikTok funnel to be very similar to the Snapchat funnel. So you would use TikTok for brand awareness and entertainment and thought leadership, event promotion, and then ultimately community building. You're not likely to get necessarily advocates on TikTok or Snapchat, but you can move them through different parts of the funnel. How to set up a cross-platform campaign. Whew, we've done a lot already, but cross-platform campaigns don't have to be overwhelming and they don't have to be really time-consuming, but they do have to be targeted and nuanced. So again, I've said it a couple times already, and I will say it a lot forever and ever and ever. You can post the same content on multiple social channels. Absolutely. Good content is good content. But whatever you're posting has to follow the social norms of that particular platform. So don't overuse hashtags on Facebook, but go hashtag crazy on Instagram. Don't be super formal and like a news broadcaster on TikTok. You want to be informal and fun and entertaining. Figure out what the social norms are for the platform and the social norms for your audience on the platform. And then feel free to share the same type of content in different ways that meet the same objectives. Think about, again, your larger call to action. What is it that you are trying to have people do or be or think or say or share on your business goals, your KPIs, and where are they in the funnel? Again, that 80-20 or 1-10 rule applies, and make sure that the content you're creating is moving people and your audience toward that goal. For example, I, like lots of people, have a deck that has been very well used during this adventure. And I needed a recommendation for someone to replace a couple of steps. The very first thing that I did is I went to Facebook and said, hey, Facebook friends, who has had somebody help their deck in the last year that really loves what they did? And all these people commented. Okay, like 5 people commented, but lots of people commented. And I was more apt to take those comments than the couple of deck companies that commented on my post because it was public. That kind of felt icky. So that was an example of both advocates from the friends that were advocating for the organizations and the deck companies that did a great job, and not knowing the social norms from the deck companies. Okay, what does a comprehensive plan look like? A comprehensive targeted campaign, what does that look like? Well, it's something that you should be thinking about doing over 6 months. So this example for Do Good Change is a friend of mine who is working to create a nonprofit. The nonprofit is working with artists in her local community and state to ask them to ask the patrons to round up their purchase. So if you buy a bud vase for $25.33, the roundup of 77 cents would go into the nonprofit to assist struggling artists. But it's not quite as simple as just telling everyone, hey, donate your change. She knows that you have to start brand awareness. And so right now, she is looking at those platforms and building brand awareness by sharing content that is awareness-based on those platforms. And she's going to do that with enough time for those posts to breathe. So let's say on Monday, she posts, say, hey, this is a great art community and we're all working together, happy post of a group of people wearing masks, socially distanced, and working together. That awareness post that she posts on Monday might hit peak traffic Monday at noon, or it might hit peak traffic on Tuesday at 3 p.m. But she's going to watch how people participate and when the comments start to dip off and when the likes start to decrease before she posts the next piece of content. And each step in her campaign plan is several weeks to a month to 6 weeks long, because she really wants to get really good and get a good base platform for her audience before she moves into the conversions for donations, before she gets people to really like do the thing that she wants them to do and that behavior. She has to condition them to know that her organization exists. This is what they are already doing. This is what they will do in the future. Now do the ask. And so she'll move through each step of this campaign, knowing that it could be 6 months before she's at the final step and getting influencers, or it could be a year, or it could be 18 months. But she's getting that actionable information back from the audience in order to make the best choices and move people through her defined funnel. How and what do you test when you're doing a campaign? So she is doing all kinds of tests from type of image to colors to tone of voice to time of day to segmented audience for any ads that she's running. She's looking at micro segments within her target audience to do different types of targeted information and targeted posts to see if it makes a difference. These are all great things to test. If you aren't testing these things yet, pick one and start. And it doesn't have to be like really, really big, like 5 different versions. It can be 3 different versions where you've just changed the image, but you've used the same copy, or that you've used different images and different copy. But pick something to test, even if it's just in your organic posts, to start getting better information back from your audience on what resonates the most with them, so that you can see what types of content you should be producing to move them through that funnel, to move them through those KPIs, and ultimately to your business goals. Here is an example, and this is not a client, it's just a really visual example of something that I thought looked really cool and that I kept getting bombarded with the ads because I must be in their target demographic. But I really liked how, even though I got these ads served to me multiple times, it was never the same ad twice. And it's a great way to share subtle differences and subtle target demographic reinforcements. So this particular organization, Pura Vida Bracelets, shows their product in a creative way. The difference between the 20 bracelets and the 5 hands holding really powerful words, it's the same subtle reinforcement of a demographic brand, of the brand essence, without being overt, as well as giving you an insight into who the target audience is. The picture is revealing in that it attracts those who maybe love surfing or are world travelers and really miss it because they've been stuck at home, or really want to support an organization that they believe in, or just want a reminder that, hey, I really do love wearing fun things. It makes me happy. Use imagery and words in your ads to create subtle target demographic reinforcements. Again, this is a great way to get more information back about your audience and what they like and don't like, so that as you're moving them through the funnel, you can create more of that. I don't have the back end metrics, but I would assume that the bracelets, where it's just the bracelets and the words, reached a slightly different audience than the person's hands holding the bracelet. And that's a great way to then reuse that information for additional targeted ads in the future. This slide is thanks to a really amazing mentor of mine, John Julte, who is the VP of Social Media and Content at the Martin Group. I don't have extensive access to really deep metrics like this, because we just have never needed it. But this is a really, really awesome example of when you take organic posts and your paid posts and you're learning more about your audience. This is a really great way to look at what that whole picture looks like for an individual campaign. So you'll want to be looking for trends over time. I would use the information for a minimum of 30 days and learn about your audience. So use organic for 30 days, and then use that paid for 30 days, and then that larger digital campaign for 30 days. So you're looking at a 90-day tracking and measurement plan to see who your nuanced audience is and what you need to be sharing with them in order to move them to that behavior and that ultimate business goal that you're looking for. Some key metrics to pay attention to on native platforms. All of these are available within the native platform. And so just make a plan to check them on a regular basis. Find out on LinkedIn your individual post likes and that career page stats. Facebook, your metrics for your posts and shares. All of these organic things will give you information that will lead you through towards your paid campaigns. Twitter, post reach, link clicks, engagement. Instagram, I love that Instagram tells me the top time to post on days. Like that is just like a nice little extra thing that says, hey, this is the top time to post to reach your target audience. I don't like that all of the native platforms don't give you that in the analytics, that you have to go searching or use a different platform to find it. But make sure if you're not already using that you're using it. It's a really easy way to make sure you're reaching your audience at the right time. Pinterest, look at your saves and engaged audience as well as your top boards. Those things will tell you what your audience wants more of. Snapchat, again, it's one of those things to look at your story completions. Those who completed all of the stories and have done the actions that you've asked for, and those individual likes. Those are really important metrics to follow for your organic content. Now, I love Sprout Social. I love Sprout Social so much. I wish they would pay me to tell people how much I love them, but they don't. And so I just get to tell you that I love them because they're really great. They make it really easy to take all of that organic and native information and put it in one place that you can do actionable information on. Sprout Social isn't super expensive. It's between $100 and $200 a month. But the information you get back and the time it saves you, it might be well worth something that you check out, particularly since it aggregates group metrics across platforms. So this is an example of Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram over a set period of time where we were running some targeted campaigns. And this is the organic kind of spillover that we got from those organic campaigns. So we were running some paid. People were also then engaging with our organic content. And so you will get some spillover as well as the specific information on the ad. I also love that Sprout gives you a detailed drill down information into specific things that you care about for your social platforms, and that it will give you some of the competitor information. So you're not necessarily going to get all of the details and all of the specifics on your competitors, but you will get some actionable data that you can use to help figure out more of where your audience overlap is. So don't use it as like a, hey, we're going to copy this, but use it as a way to see where your audience overlaps and to see what content they're producing that gets engagements. You might have to actually click through to their page to see some of that information, but you'll get a lot of data back that you can use to make your own campaigns better. The historical information is really important to me, and it's really important for any campaign that you're running so that you can get the pre, the middle, and the post, whether that's an organic or a paid campaign. And I like the listening aspect of this. So at the law school, we had a professor who just happened to publish a book on impeachment right before the Missouri governor was going through that whole process. So it just happened that he happened to publish it just at the right time. And so he saw a really initial big wave of interest in his book, and we saw a big wave of interest in his social profile and the things that he was sharing. And so we started tracking it. And then it kind of, as you see, August and September, it pretty well dipped. We had a slight increase in October. And then December, when the sitting president was going through an impeachment trial, it just took off. And so that let me know that, okay, we should back off of any paid campaign that we're doing, because his organic reach is going to be better than anything we could have paid for. His organic conversations could be better than anything we could have paid for. I didn't get, because we didn't get connected with the publisher, so I didn't get the actual information back on book sales, but I'm sure if you were to take this to the publisher that they could do an overlay and see when the uptick in sales occurred. Other analytic platforms that are available that will give you that more detailed audience information that you might want to consider are Hootsuite, HubSpot, Agora Pulse, Falcon, Brand24. All of those are great ones. I have used Hootsuite and HubSpot myself. I know other people have used the other three on the list, but ultimately, if you were going to look into a platform that will let you get more information, apply your KPIs and your business goals, details on each individual post, and a scheduling. Find one that meets whatever your needs are. Find one that you say, okay, it has 4 of the 5 things I want, and it's within my price point, and this is a great place to start. Hootsuite has a free option. It's worth at least trying. If you're trying to get all of that aggregate data back on your own, find something that will let you at least keep track. Another option is to create just a Google spreadsheet and start keeping track of your post likes and your organic interactions, as well as your paid, and where they fit in the funnel, so that you're getting a really good overall picture of the things that are working and the things that you can do better next time. What does removing likes from the conversation mean for social marketers? It means better connections. It means you're connecting with the micro audience that really is going to become advocates. It means you're connecting with the audience members who really are going to purchase or buy or do the thing that you want them to do. It does also mean that user acquisition becomes harder, but the users you are acquiring are worth way more than they were before, because they're actually going to do the thing that you want them to do. You can still see your content performance. You can still see how you're engaging with the larger audience, but it'll give you a really, really deep understanding of who the audience members are that are going to do the thing that you want the most. Your likes probably will decrease, but that's okay if you're having more conversations, if you're moving more people through the funnel, if you're getting more of the end result that moves your business goals forward. I like to think of that 80-20 and 1-10 amount as building trust. Every time you post and every time you interact with your audience, you're building trust, you're banking little amounts of trust along the way, so that when you do overtly ask for that action or that thing, that amount you're spending isn't depleting your trust. It isn't depleting the bank of goodwill that you've built up. So, takeaways. Keep your goals front and center. If they're not on a whiteboard, find a place to put them that is going to help you really frame all of the content and all of the things that you're doing, so that you know this thing is going to move that forward. This KPI is going to help us achieve our business goals. And then map out your communications funnel for every audience on every platform. It sounds time consuming, but it really lets you connect those dots between these things that we're doing on these platforms directly relate to these KPIs and directly relate to the business goals. Again, don't feel like you have to be on every platform all the time. And don't be afraid to test things. Don't be afraid to subtly, gently nudge your audience toward the things that you want them to be. You don't have to just have throwaway posts where you're asking what your audience's favorite color is or their favorite animal. Any of those things, they're great if they're moving them toward the, hey, you know, your favorite color was blue and we have these brand new amazing blue shoes coming out. That can be start and finish, but do it with a purpose. Do it with some thought behind it. And then test those different things out. Test different ways to engage your audience. I promised Chris I would leave oodles of time for questions and answers. And I know that there's a tiny little bit of other things at the end. And I am not 100% sure who has taken over for Chris, but...
Hi. Aurora, hi, I'm Bridget. I'm with
Bridget.
the Kansas City chapter. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
So we're, I just checked the Q&A and chat, and I don't see anything in there, but please submit your questions. You know, one thing that occurred to me as you were going through this. I work in a team, and so although I manage the social media accounts and the content going out there, I have a whole nother group of folks that are handling the analytics and analyzing that. And sometimes it gets a little bit tricky when we start talking about all of it because they're diving deep into it. And so do you have any tips on working in that type of a relationship as a manager?
Yeah, so I think I spoke earlier about how I didn't always do these things right. When I was at the Missouri State Teachers Association, where I was for 10 years before I was at the law school, when we started, the social posts weren't connected directly to the business goals. And so we were having great conversations, and I was getting great information back about who our audience was and what they liked and what was important to them. But we didn't have those connected to KPIs, and we didn't have those connected to business goals. And so once we got everybody together in one room and we were able to discuss, all right, these are the goals for this year. These are the number goals, percentage goals, whatever that targeted piece is, we were able to then discuss those KPIs and then discuss what content would help support those, all the while finding a way to share those analytics, to share the daily analytics, the weekly analytics, to share that as a team. And so, Bridget, it might be worth, at least at the onset, having a weekly meeting, even for just 30 minutes, that says, this is what we did, this is the analytics, here's what's working, here's what we need to do more of. But finding a way to bring all of those people together really can make everybody feel like they're on the same team and working toward the same goals. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a way to share that information internally, maybe just hop on a Zoom with everyone right now. Yeah, and until you can get together in person, but find a way to make that a connection so that everybody sees the whole puzzle.
Right.
I like to think of the goals and the KPIs and the content and the analytics as just parts, but when you put it together, you really get a whole picture of what's working, what's not working. I do see a question here from Paul, so I'm going to pop in and say, Paul, I will happily share that link in just a few minutes when I figure out how to cut and paste without breaking the webinar. And then I also see you had some questions about when the social audience was moving through the funnel, what were some of the breakthroughs that I saw and what was engaging them to move from awareness to advocate. I'm going to, I hope, pull the funnel back up so that I can give you some specific examples. And so I hope this doesn't give anyone like total whiplash going so quickly through, but I'm going to bring up that funnel. Actually, here, this is a good one. Okay. So just to recap, your question was, what were some of the anecdotes of when we saw the audience move through and what was engaging them? It really depends. So it's really organization and brand specific, but I can say that when we did an awareness campaign of, for example, for the artist, the thing that she's doing right now is she's posting those pictures and she's looking to see which posts resonate the most so that she can recreate those for the consideration phase, so that she can recreate those to the actual concrete donations. But it's just really specific to the things that you're working toward. So you can do gentle nudges. I kind of gave a quick example of like, what's your favorite color? And then like, oh, what is it that you associate with that color? And using that as a conversation engagement to then nudge people along to, hey, we just launched this brand new color, and seeing where the drop off and seeing where the engagement occurs between between A and B. But it's a kind of a trial and error. You're going to want to test things out and see what moves people and what makes them drop off. I have a feeling you might say I didn't answer your question. So if you still have that question, type it out and let me know, because I'm happy to answer it differently. Okay, never mind. Paul says that was helpful. Thanks. Yay. Thanks, Paul. Oh, I've noticed that I started doing this in real life. Like this is not cool in real life. It's only cool on Zoom. So like if you're waving at your neighbor getting the mail, don't be like, hey, it's weird. Tim has a question about advice for weaning supervisory lay people off vanity metrics. What suggestions do I have for beginning to get leaders to care about the right things when without asking them to do too much too quickly? This is my favorite question. I love this question because it's scary. It's scary because likes and comments like make you feel good, and the more of those you get, the more you feel good and the more you feel like you're doing things. But I think the answer lies in they're not moving the business goals forward. So whatever the business goal is, that should help you backtrack to what content you should be sharing. And maybe you do have to get your audience weaned off of those super feel good, like generating posts toward things that move them toward that goal, that move them toward either loyalty or advocacy or purchase. And explaining to the business leaders or the company leaders that this is only going to help your business. Having a social page just to have a social page is not why we have social anymore. It's why you have a personal account. It's not why you have a business account. Your business account should be a reflection of the goals and objectives that your business has and should be moving people through the process to get them to do the thing that you want. Tim, if you have more questions, feel free to type them out. Bridget, did you have any others that are coming through from hand raises?
Well, we have some in the chat. And so Rachel asks if you could repeat the name of the blog that you mentioned that compares the platforms for advertising campaigns. And I think that was the same question that Paul had. And so Rachel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something you're going to share, right?
Yes. So I'm going to practice copy and pasting and hope I don't break the webinar.
Okay. The next question we have is from Christine. What if you can't afford $100 or more per month for social media metrics management?
Cool. Build yourself a Google Doc. Find a Google spreadsheet. I've put one together that I've cobbled together over time, and I'm happy to share that with you if you want to send me an email, and let me see if I can pop through to my email again. Send me an email and I'm happy to share the one that I cobbled together. But it really doesn't have to be more than just a Google Doc where you're keeping track, where you're putting in what the content was, what the KPI was for that content, because going back and sometimes remembering is hard. Content, KPI, likes, comments, shares, clicks, whatever that thing that you're measuring from that individual post is, so that you have a place where you're keeping track.
So we have another question from Sherry. Do you suggest a place to go to learn analytics?
Yes. I would start by getting into the back end of your analytics, and there's all those little eyes that pop up for like Facebook and some of the other ones, and see if, oh wait, sorry, Paul, I hit the wrong button. See if that answers your question. And then very quickly you can get down a rabbit hole from Google from there. But I would suggest looking into the analytic things that are of interest to you first before looking at like a blog or a training or a course or any of those kinds of things. Just start with what makes you interested in the native app, and then follow that rabbit hole for as long as you can.
So I think we have another question from Tim on the Q&A. Where do you go to find industry benchmarks and learn how to define what's good, great in terms of important KPIs?
So yes, again, that's like a Google rabbit hole for me too, as I look to see what other organizations are measuring. So I'm trying to think of, for email, for example, email is part of a campaign. I didn't delve into it deeply into this, but a social campaign can and probably should have some sort of an email component with it. I do know that things like MailChimp and some of the other email providers do give you industry benchmarks for comparison purposes. I will be honest again and say I sort of cheat and I look at what other competitors are doing on their social and see if I can add that plus the like funnel parts that I know. So for example, brand news for Facebook, that's awareness. So how many posts of my competitor are on brand news, and just see what they're doing. There's so many numbers out there. There's so many different variations on it. You really have to do a little bit of trial and error to figure out what works for you and what's a good benchmark for you and your organization, and then try to compare it backwards. That was a really long answer to say you have to figure it out for yourself.
Well, it looks like we're getting all of the answers for everybody. We can take a few more questions. If we have any more, you can either type them into the Q&A or type them into the chat. Hi, it looks like Chris is back.
Hey, Aurora and Bridget, I want to thank you for doing this webinar. This is actually, I think, the 12th or 13th webinar that St. Louis PRSA has done in conjunction with the Southeast or Southwest Missouri chapter, the Kansas City chapter, the Southeast Wisconsin chapter, and the Nebraska chapter. So there's a lot of people coming together to make this happen, and we truly appreciate everyone's attendance. These are a great value to our membership, and on top of that, PRSA is about making relationships with people within PRSA, and this is a way to network with people that are on the webinar today, and even the speakers. So I do encourage you to reach out to Aurora. I've heard her speak many times, including at Icon. So I know she gave a great speech and or a good presentation. I'm looking forward to watching it in replay. So.
And if you do watch it in replay and you're like, oh man, I wish I'd asked this thing, email me and I'm super happy to answer this thing. Also, if you will be at Icon, you have seen the beta version of this. There will be an enhanced version, a slightly longer version at Icon. So please think about coming to that and perhaps seeing me again, because it's always nice to have friendly faces in a virtual audience.
And I think, did we have one more question that just logged in, or did we go over all of those so far? Bridget?
I think we've gone over all of them.
Well, and
unless somebody has another one.
You thought we were going to be, you're going to run long. This is
perfect.
I
know, you told me to save lots of room for questions and answers. So like I didn't go as deep into some of the slides as I would have, because I was like, all right, Chris had lots of room for questions.
Cool. Well, seeing none, and Bridget, I guess, let me see who else is still on here. We have a number of people that are still on, but thank you all for joining us today. We have several more webinars lined up, so go to either Eventbrite or you can go to any of the chapters' Facebook page. They're all co-marketing event coordinators for this web series, so tell your friends, and we'd love to have you on next week's event. So any last words, Aurora?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to, I think if I can figure out how to do the chat version of this, I do have all of those things that I referenced as far as current trends and, you know, the 49 billion devices connected to the internet. I have the references for that. And Tim, you might be able to find some of the metrics for comparison within some of those current trends. I do also want to give a slight caveat and say, when I put these trends together, it was the end of February and the beginning of March, and things do look a little different. The social landscape has changed, and so you might be finding that some of the things that you were posting that was really resonating with your audience 6 months ago isn't. And so that's a really good time for you to make some changes and tweaks and do things slightly different, because social behavior on social channels has changed in the last 6 months. People are on at different times than originally scheduled. So if you've got content scheduled out, maybe take a look and see if that content is doing what you want it to when you want it to, or if you need to change the timing of it or your micro audience. But now is a great time to do that if you haven't already started on it, because the social behaviors have changed a little bit.
All right. Well, thank you, Aurora, again. Thank you, Bridget, for being the fill-in today and moderating. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great, safe, and awesome week. Okay, guys?
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.